Hello, my name is Waheguru Pal S Sidhu, and I'm a clinical professor at the Center for Global Affairs. I've been at the CGA now for just over 5 years, but I've been working on global governance in general and on the UN in different aspects for the last 2 decades or more. So almost about 25 years or so. We have a brand new, relatively new UN specialization, which is very uniquely designed to prepare our students for careers with, in, and on the UN. So it looks at the UN from different aspects, not just within the Secretariat, which is normally called the Second UN, but also in working with think tanks who are doing a lot of work with the UN, either in terms of projects or in long-term basis as well. We have been very fortunate to have an incredibly impressive group of alum who have been working again in, with, and on the UN in different settings. So for example, we have an alum who is working at the UN office in Africa, based out of Dakar. We have another alum who is in Colombia, working as part of the UN and volunteering there as well. We have a very, very impressive alums who are now leading the think tank part of the UN Foundation, which does a lot of work with the United Nations. In addition to that, UN Women, Department of Peacekeeping Operations, UN Development Program, UNDP as it's called, also has many of our graduates working there as well. I think the way that this course or this specialization prepares the students for the UN is through the 2 core courses that it offers, as well as practicums and a global field intensive on the UN, which is a local field intensive because it's based in and around New York. And let me tell you a little bit about the 2 core courses. The first course is really an introduction to the UN, and it really introduces students to the complexity and the diversity of issues and the UN Charter that the UN, that determines the role of the UN. It identifies and students get to understand and appreciate the first UN, which is the role of the member states, the second UN, which is the UN officials, the Secretariat, the Secretary General, and the third UN, which is people who are working in the civil society area, in think tanks, as NGOs. And the UN is increasingly doing a lot more work with them as well. So I think that's an important component to keep in mind. We also talk about the 3 major pillars of the UN, which is the peace and security pillar, the development pillar, which also looks at sustainable development goals, as well as human rights, the whole gamut of human rights. In addition to that, we also look at gender in the UN, disarmament in the UN, terrorism and the UN, and of course, the perennial question of reform of the UN as well. And what is remarkable about this, this kind of basic introductory course is I have had students who have actually been working for the UN, who've then done the basic course and found it actually very useful because it gives a complete picture of what the UN is. The second core course, it dives into the issue of the UN's challenges much more deeply. It's titled the UN in 21st Century Challenges. This builds on the core course, the introductory core course, in 2 or 3 ways. Number one, it's far more experiential. So the students are taking their skills from the first course, their familiarity with the Charter, their knowledge of the UN structure, and being involved in exercises, simulations, negotiations. All of these really bring in sort of the real UN experience into the classroom. And they also are encouraged to write memos, which is how the UN kind of works in trying to develop new ideas or push different projects and approaches as well. The second way the UN specialization is crucial is we bring in a lot of UN staff, officials, and experts. So the students get a great opportunity to interact firsthand with many of the UN officials themselves who are working on many of these issues. So that, of course, provides very deep, unique insights, but also provides an opportunity for networking. So I know, for example, of many students who've been able to use and build on that opportunity to get exposure and even some opportunities within the UN system going forward as well. And third, and last but not the least, although this was much more constrained during COVID, we also now have visits to the UN, to the various missions, and to think tanks which work around the UN as well. And that again provides a really, a hands-on experience for the students to see and feel what it is like being in the UN in that geographical sort of structure, and what are the pros and cons of those kind of dynamics. So these are some of the unique aspects of the specialization, precisely designed to make sure that the minute our students finish that, they're very, very familiar with the UN, they're familiar with the issues that the UN is dealing, and frankly, they're very fit for purpose for careers in the UN. And if you'd like more information about the UN specialization and the UN initiative and the kind of work that we at the Center for Global Affairs are doing on the UN, please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @ capital U, capital N, AT, capital NYU. So @UN @NYU. And there you can also sign up to our newsletter, which has the same name, which will provide you much more detail and information about the kind of work that we are already doing with the UN, me and my faculty colleagues as well. Last but not the least, if you would like to reach out, please feel free to do so. My email is wpssidhu, all one word, @nyu.edu. Look forward to hearing from you.